to this course on Western philosophy. Uh, some of you might already know, but especially for those who are not acquainted with the activities of Bhaktivedanta Research Center, let me just tell you that this Bhaktivedanta Research Center is committed to deciphering Indian philosophical, cultural, religious, tradition, as well as we always keep our doors and windows open to Western philosophical tradition. And keeping this in mind, we are organizing this week-long course on Western philosophy. And in February, we will be organizing another course, similar course on Indian philosophy as well. And as you might have noticed that, we are not charging any fees for this course. So the only request that on behalf of BRC, we have to you, our dear participants, is that we request you, urge you strongly to attend all the lectures, all the discussions, and we also welcome you to actively participate in the discussion. We are very happy to have a group of very eminent philosophers from India who will be delivering lectures on different aspects of Western philosophy. So we are all really looking forward to these lectures and the ensuing discussions. And we also look forward to the presentations by the participants. And we already received some requests from some participants to change their presentation schedule. And we will take care of that today itself. So don't worry. So without much ado, let us welcome Dr. Nilanjan Bhowmick to our course this morning. Dr. Bhowmick teaches philosophy in the philosophy department of Delhi University. His areas of interest include epistemology, philosophy of language, etc. And he has many important publications to his credit. So over to you, Dr. Bhowmick, please now.
Thank you very much, sir, and good morning to everyone. So the topic of my talk is supposed to be the trouble with knowledge. So let me see if I can share the PowerPoint that I made. My technological skills are very close to the Neanderthals, but let me see. Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes, absolutely fine.
Oh, okay. And if someone is unable to see, don't worry about it because I'm going to speak about it in any case. So that's all right. The PowerPoint is just to help me, I guess. So, so what's the trouble with knowledge? We all of us have knowledge, right? So I know that I had breakfast today. I had oats and milk, and I know I'm in Delhi. I know this is the program that the Bhaktivedanta Research Institute is running. I know that the moon is the satellite of the Earth. I know that the winter in Beijing is very harsh. Indeed, it is very cold in Delhi right now. So I know all these things. So what's the problem? I mean, all of us know many things. Indeed, many of you know things that I don't know. You know many things about technology that I have no idea about. So what's the problem with knowledge? I mean, why are we even discussing this thing? So let's see what the problem is. My idea of this talk, by the way, is that I introduce you to the problems of knowledge, and then other speakers can easily wade into their topic. So I kind of decided that I will try and talk in a way which does not interfere with what the other speakers are going to say. There's a lot to talk about in knowledge, but let's see what the trouble with knowledge is. I mean, surely there should be no trouble as such. So well, let's see what the trouble is that philosophers feel. So, let me see if it is okay. No, wait. I think I got the slide wrong. Yeah, right. So, the trouble with knowledge is that it has problems which are of various kinds. So I'm going to speak about all these problems one by one by one. One of the problems may not strike you as very interesting. It actually doesn't strike many people as very interesting, but to philosophers it is very interesting. And that's the problem of skepticism. So there are people, I started by saying we know many things, but there are people who say that we don't know anything. Now, that sounds very strange and quite harsh, I must say. But these people are not some, they are just not skeptics for nothing. They actually give rather good reasons for this. So, since they have good reasons for them, we need to meet those reasons if we have to defend our claims that we know certain things. So, their reasons we will look at very, very soon, right in the next slide, actually. But the other problem, so the first problem is some people say that nothing is known. And indeed, nothing can be known. And forget about it. I mean, the knowledge is simply unattainable. It's just not there. Of course, you can believe things. That is fine. Nobody can stop you from believing anything. But the fact that you can know things, that's just not possible. Okay, that's the problem of skepticism. Then there is a problem of definition. Okay, suppose that we are not skeptics. Okay, fine. We know so many things. Yeah, but somebody may ask you, what's the definition of knowledge? Well, the situation with definition in philosophy, at least, is quite embarrassing in spite of about 2000 years of quite diligent research, certainly the last 400 years, and especially in the last century, let's say 20th century. Incredible research has been done. Incredible research. The quality of the research is unbelievable, both in India and abroad. And so, with all this research, we still don't know what's the definition of knowledge. So, that's an interesting literature in itself. Then we have the problem of types of knowledge. Now, it turns out that there are many kinds of knowledge, many types of knowledge. They're not necessarily all reducible to each other, or at least that's open for debate. So, we can have knowledge like knowing how to ride a bicycle, for instance. That's quite different from knowing that the moon is the satellite of the Earth, or that I am speaking in a Bhaktivedanta Research Institute a course of some kind. It's very different from I don't know how to ride a bicycle. I don't know how to ride a scooter, for instance. I don't know how to run that thing. So that's very different from saying that I don't know quantum mechanics or something. It's just there's some kind of difference between them. But what's the difference? So there are many kinds and types of knowledge. So that's also a problem. How many types exist? Are they really just? Do they really? Are they all different, or are they just the manifestations of the same thing? Then there is the issue of the problem of value of knowledge. What's the value? I mean, obviously, knowledge is extremely valuable, but what makes it valuable? Why is it valuable? Why should I pursue knowledge? So, I mean, when we go to school, when we go to college, when we pursue higher education, what are we really doing? We are all pursuing knowledge, right? That's what we are doing. We want to know certain things, and sometimes people get into higher studies. And I always joke that the guy who has a PhD is the guy who knows the least about anything. So that has to be the case, actually. But I mean, the idea is that we all seek knowledge. If we all seek knowledge, we must be valuing it. What gives it value? Why should it have value of any kind at all? So then there's the problem of sources of knowledge. This is a standard problem. I mean, this is there in Indian philosophy all over the place. It's there in Western philosophy, since Greek philosophy, Descartes, everyone has a problem with the sources of knowledge. Exactly what is the source of knowledge? We do have knowledge, nobody doubts that. But the problem is, what's the source? And of course, all these sources, perception, memory, acquaintance, testimony, reasoning, whatever, all of these can be challenged each individually and separately and collectively as well. And so it's a real problem as to if you look at the sources of knowledge, they are very dubious by nature, and that can really be a big shot in the arm for the skeptics. So even if you reject skeptics' main argument, they have other arguments up their sleeves. And so it's not that easy to get around with their more complicated arguments. A good book actually on this whole issue is, I think, Outlines of Pyrrhonism by Sextus Empiricus. That's an interesting book actually to read, because he gives various reasons to believe that we don't know anything. Similar reasons were given by Montaigne in a book called The Apology of Raymond Sebond. That's an interesting book to read actually, because he goes into great length to suggest that very similar to Sextus Empiricus, that when we talk about our sources of knowledge, well, I mean, things are not very pleasant when we talk about them. So then, of course, then the question arises, what is it that we can know? That's a very complex question too. All right, let's grant that we know many things. Fine, that's all right. But what is it that we can know? What is this thing that we come to know? So, do we know facts or do we know universals? Plato thought we only knew universals. We cannot know any fact about the world. So that's like a very extreme position. And once you read a lot of philosophy, you kind of think, yeah, maybe Plato is right. But of course, nobody ever thinks that universals exist. I mean, it's a major debate in the field. But very good philosophers like Russell and Plato and any number of other philosophers, they all believe in universals. So there must be some good reason to believe in them. But it's also very hard to deny that we know facts. Plato was very upfront about this, but that he denied that you could know something like I had breakfast just an hour back. Plato would say, "No, I'm sorry, you don't know this. You may have a belief and whatever, that's fine, but you don't know this thing." It's because you can't know this thing. It's just all you can know is the connections between forms actually. But anyway, we'll come to all this. So all these problems are there: the problem of skepticism, the problem of definition, the problem of types of knowledge, the problem of value of knowledge, the problem of sources, and the problem of what can be known. So all these problems exist. So it is true, we appear to think that we know many things, but then there are all these problems that we need to meet if we wish to construct a theory of knowledge. I haven't even mentioned the problems of justification. That is still to be done, but we may not get time to get into it. There's a very interesting position regarding uh, foundationalism and coherentism and whatever, but I'll see maybe somewhere along as we are discussing, I will get into that. So, as I said, the first hurdle to knowledge, it does sound like a great hurdle. After all, we know so many things, so why should we believe the skeptic? I mean, I know there is a table in front of me, there's a laptop on top of it, I have two hands, whatever. uh, so it seems like ridiculous that somebody can say that, no, 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 you don't know these things. But all right, so the skeptic says it's possible for you to know anything. But why not? So we don't know whether we are dreaming or not. So the argument can also be given. This is an argument from dreaming, but you can get it from a brain in a vat or an evil demon. And there's a reason why I gave it from the argument from dreaming, and we will see that a bit later. Why I went for dreaming instead of, let's say, brain in a vat or evil demon. So, but the argument can also be run with a brain in a vat. So we don't know we have brains in vats. So maybe my brain is in a vat, and there are electrodes fitted in my brain, and the electrodes are lighting up my brain and whatever. And so I think I'm speaking to all of you, but actually that's not the case. It's just that electrodes are fitted in my brain and they are activating this part and that part, and it makes me feel that I am having this real experience of speaking to many students. So, all right, yeah, that's possible. Indeed, I would say that last night, just I mean, like 5 or 6 hours ago, I was dreaming that I'm giving this talk, and I actually dreamt that there were lots of problems in the internet connection. So this problem and that problem and whatever. So, but that's just a dream, and but it felt real. I cannot say that no, no, that's a dream. It did not feel real. So what? This, that. No, well, actually, when I was dreaming, it felt real. So thankfully, I'm not a Freudian or anything. So I mean, I have never read his book, Interpretation of Dreams. So I don't really care about interpreting dreams. So I just enjoy the dreams that I have and forget them in the morning. But the dreaming argument is quite strong. It says we don't know whether we are dreaming or not. Am I dreaming right now that there is a talk going on? Well, I would say no. But what's the proof that I have? If I don't know whether I'm dreaming right now, then if we don't know that, then we don't know we have hands. I may be just dreaming I have hands. If I'm a brain in a vat, then I just dream. I just feel that I have hands, but I really don't have any hands. So the conclusion is that therefore we don't know we have hands. It's like a modus ponens kind of thing. So this is a valid argument. There's nothing wrong with the structure of the argument. You can challenge the premises and whatever. That's what has been done in the over the centuries. But the argument is valid. And Barry Stroud, for instance, has a famous article where he says that it's an extract from a book he has, The Significance of Philosophical Skepticism, where he says that, look, this dreaming argument is a very serious argument. You can't just say that it is just some silly kind of thing. You got to meet that argument. Yeah, you can say it's silly if you are walking in the street and somebody tells you, yeah, all that. But if you're dealing with the structure of knowledge and what it is, you got to deal with this argument. Some people dismiss it, by the way. So Rorty says that the skeptic should be dismissed about it. Yeah, that's fine, but let's not get into that immediately. We will look into it maybe a little bit later. So let's see what are the responses to skepticism. You would be wondering what are the responses to skepticism. One is dismissal. I mean, you just can say no, 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 don't talk nonsense. Of course, we know many things. That's just silly that you are saying that we don't know anything. How can anybody say that I don't know whether I have hands or not? That's ridiculous. So that's actually something like Moore's response. The Moore's response is quite sophisticated. G. Moore is a Western philosopher about 1900, I think 25 or so, he wrote this paper, and then I think it was called Proof of an External World or something. So extracts of this paper are available in practically any anthology of epistemology. And Moore is a very frustrating philosopher to read because he keeps on saying things which are very commonsensical, but they're very hard to believe. So he is quite a frustrating guy to read, but he's a fascinating philosopher. He's not necessarily always commonsensical, by the way. So, but anyway, in refuting skeptics, he tended to not necessarily rely on common sense, but he did have an argument. So he said that, look, I can easily show that skepticism is wrong. So apparently, famously, he when he was giving this lecture, he raised his right hand and he said, "Here I have one hand," and then he said, "Here is my left hand," and then he said, "This shows that I have two hands." So this shows that the external world exists. Well, that's like obviously everybody is very either puzzled by this argument as to why it succeeds, because it just begs the question. Moore does not say I know that I am not dreaming. He doesn't say that. Indeed, he says in the article that look, there's no way in the world I can know that I am not dreaming. There's no way in the world. It's just he says that I'm certain I'm not dreaming, but I cannot prove that to you. I just can't prove it. And so he says, but of this, I'm absolutely certain that I have two hands. And if I have two hands, he seems to think that this shows that the external world exists. So the skeptics don't necessarily deny the existence of the external world. That would be a metaphysical kind of skepticism. But they deny that you know that there is an external world. So Moore's conclusion is that I know there is an external world because I have two hands. And he shows his two hands, and he gives all kinds of other examples. So he says that when people suppose you are checking a book and you say there are three errors in this book, and you point out the three errors, the other guy agrees. He says, oh yeah, yes, there are three spelling errors in this book, so we need to correct that. So he says, when you agree with that argument, what's your problem in agreeing with my argument when I say here is one hand, here is another hand, and you should agree that yes, I have two hands. So, but Moore doesn't is not necessarily unsophisticated in this argument. Some people take him to be rather unsophisticated. He's not. Indeed, he says when he's pushed to the corner, and when people tell him you're just begging the question, how can you say something like this when the skeptic is saying you could be dreaming? What's your answer to that? Moore gives a very interesting answer. He says, I can know things without proof. If you are asking me to prove that I have two hands, I can't prove that to you because I can't prove that I'm not dreaming. But I can know things without proof. It's like knowing 2 plus 2 is 4. What's the proof? Do I know what is the proof of 2 plus 2 is 4? No, not really. I mean, not, that doesn't make me an ignorant person. But if you push me and worry me and show me philosophy of mathematics and whatever, I might start wondering about it. But the issue is, it seems that every human being, they may be illiterate, it's of no relevance. I mean, they just know that 2 plus 2 is 4. If you return the wrong change to the rickshaw wala, he would know that straight away that it's a wrong change. It's less than what he should have got. So it does seem as if we have some kind of knowledge which is there without proof. So it seems that when I flow through the world, I know there is an external world. I don't need proof for this. That's the idea that Moore has. Of course, it has been contested and whatever, that's fine. And there's a vast literature on this. Even there is a guy who actually does physics, and he's a physicist. So even he has a long 30-page article on a very difficult to read article on Moore. It's kind of weird how many people respond to Moore. Moore is one of the most discussed philosophers, at least in the analytic tradition. And quite rightly so. I mean, he does worry people. But that's one of the initial responses in the 20th century. There have, of course, been other responses. Ever since Descartes came up with this argument, Descartes gives this argument from dreaming in the Meditations, a very famous book that he wrote. Some people say that that's not a very serious book, but anyway, at least philosophers take it seriously. So the other response, which is a more recent response, so all the other responses that I'm going to give you are recent responses, something like post 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, something like that. So contextualism. Contextualism was first formulated by, one of the people who formulated it was Keith DeRose. And the idea is this. Actually, contextualism and all the others that you see, not veridicalism, but at least contrastivism, they actually say that yes, the skeptic is right. There are certain contexts in which you can't defeat the skeptic. So they surrender to the skeptic straight away. But the surrender is a very clever surrender. They say, look, when you are going out in the street, the skeptic's notion simply doesn't matter. If somebody asks you, what time is it? You say, okay, it's whatever, 11 o'clock or something, 11:20. Okay. So should I be skeptical about this? Somebody says, well, do you know whether it's 11:20 or 11:30? You say, no, I know it's 11:20. Of course, it's 11:20. So I check my watch and everything. So But somebody asked me, do you know it's 11:20 or is it, are you dreaming it's 11:20? Here the problem is that the contextualist says if the standards of knowledge are raised so high that I have to now answer to anybody who asks me about whether I'm dreaming or not, that's a serious matter. They say that in certain contexts, the standards of knowledge are fairly low. So in an examination, say you're giving an exam in philosophy, okay, the standard of knowledge is very high. You got to remember things and do all kinds of things and write an answer in a particular way. Okay, standard of knowledge is very high. But out in the streets, if somebody asks you who wrote the meditations and you say Descartes, okay, that's fine. I mean, the standards of knowledge are not very high. You could have got it wrong, maybe. Maybe somebody else also wrote meditations. But actually, Marcus Aurelius also wrote meditations. So you got to one has to wonder who one is speaking about. But the standards of knowledge in very simple situations, you're in the market, you're at home, speaking to your mother, whatever, the standards of knowledge are very low. But if you increase the standards of knowledge, suddenly the skeptic enters and says, no, no, you don't know whether you were speaking to your mother. You might be dreaming. Oh, well, okay. There, I don't know whether I was speaking to my mother. But ordinarily speaking, if I was in my home and I'm speaking to my mother, yeah, that's fine. What's wrong with that? I mean, of course, I know I'm speaking to my mother. But in extraordinary circumstances, the skeptic wins. So the basic idea is it's a kind of divide and rule policy. The idea is that you have some contexts which are perfectly normal, nothing's wrong with them. I mean, nobody's asking you philosophical questions there, so you know stuff there. But when we are presented in a philosophical kind of environment, like let's say this lecture is going on, here I can really puzzle you and say, no, no, we are dreaming, we might be a brain in a vat, this, that. These possibilities become live in this context. So knowledge is a context sensitive expression. It is like the word I. When I say I am having lunch, I'm speaking about myself. When you say I am having lunch, that is you say it, I am having lunch, then it means that you are having lunch, not me. So the word I shifts from speaker to speaker to speaker. In the same way, knowledge tends to shift in standards from one place to another place. So in an examination hall, the standards are a bit high. Outside the examination hall, okay, standards are much lower. In front of the skeptic, the standards are the highest. So the skeptic will just refuse to believe that you have any knowledge at all. So there, the standards of answering the skeptic are incredibly high. Even an exam answer is not going to work there. Even Einstein will have problems with the skeptic because it's just, I mean, the skeptic just doesn't agree. So you have to do something very big to defeat the skeptic. But in every other context, it's fine. You're riding in a bus, so it's okay. That's fine. There's nothing wrong in talking to another person and saying, okay, I know the way to Victoria Memorial or something. No, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So contextualism is a kind of divide and rule policy. You change the context, knowledge is there. If the skeptical context exists, okay, knowledge is not there. So, and some people actually criticize this, saying that look, in the morning you knew that you had oats with milk, but the moment the skeptic knocks on your door and comes in, then you don't know that you had oats with milk. How is that possible? It says that people say this is just ridiculous. At the same breath, I have to say, I know that I had breakfast oats with milk, and also I don't know that I had breakfast oats with milk. So, I mean, how is this possible? So people say that this kind of nonsense is simply not done. I mean, there are long articles on case contextualism. I think there should be nothing less than 1,600 to 2,000 articles on this. So if one has to start investigating this matter, well, it's essentially a philosophy of language matter. So, but it's a fascinating kind of thing that whether knowledge shifts standards. Okay, one guy who thinks, or rather, many philosophers think that contextualism is not the right answer to the skeptic. Contrastivism is the right answer. What is contrastivism? It says that contextualism compares no with I, but it should really be compared with the word prefers. So when I say I prefer ice cream, what I really mean is I prefer ice cream to cookies, let's say, or I prefer ice cream to biscuits or something like that, whatever. So, or I prefer ice cream to cakes. So in the same way, when I say I know something, the moon is the satellite of the earth. So what I mean to really say is I know that the moon is the satellite of the earth rather than the moon being the satellite of the sun. Something like that. Well, actually, the moon is the satellite of the sun too, but in a odd way, that's all. So, or you say, I know that chocolate is harmful for me rather than cakes being harmful for me. So basically, a rather than clause is there. Even though we don't see it, we just say, I know the way to Victoria Memorial. I don't say I know the way to Victoria Memorial rather than the way to, I don't know, some other place in Calcutta, or Park Street or something. So we don't necessarily say the rather than clause, but it is actually there. And there are arguments to believe that they're actually there. There are certain arguments have been given from semantics and syntax to believe that this extra place is there in the knowledge locution. So those arguments are very, very complex and technical, but once you read it, it's all right. Read Jonathan Schaffer on contrastivism. He has argued for this position for about the last 10 years, I think. He has any number of papers on it. So it's a very controversial position. Many epistemologists reject it. But Schaffer says this solves skepticism. Well, how? Because Moore knows that he has hands rather than stumps. Stump means that his hands are not there. So maybe he's got an accident, so he lost his hands. So he knows he has hands rather than stumps. Yeah, of course. But he doesn't know he has hands rather than brain in bad images. That he doesn't know. So essentially, this is the same answer as contextualism, but it's just that it is being given in a different way. So the idea is that the contrastivist says, look, certain contrasts are right, and certain contrasts I just don't know. So I don't know whether I have hands rather than I am dreaming that I have hands. But I do know that I have hands rather than stumps. So some knowledge is all right. There is no problem there. Some contrasts are fine. Some contrasts, sorry, they reduce my knowledge. Okay. Again, both contextualism and contrastivism are backhanded compliments to the skeptic, essentially. But they are also complex theories of some kind. So, I mean, they are not that easy to reject, actually. So let's look at veriticalism. Veriticalism just says that if you have to, this is a highly complex theory actually. It just says that if you have to, it comes with Davidson, with many others. The idea is that when I interpret other people, obviously I have to assume that they share my beliefs. Because if I don't assume this, then how am I supposed to interpret them? So if they share my beliefs and I assume that, and if I have to also assume that their beliefs are true, largely speaking. So if their beliefs are true and I share my beliefs, then it just follows that they know what they know. So this kind of very complex argument is there. It runs through philosophy of language and whatever. It's kind of hard to say whether this argument is right or wrong. Lots of skeptics are there about this. So Edward Craig once published a paper saying that, look, it's all very nice to say all this, but ultimately I also have to know what beliefs I have. And that doesn't come to me through interpretation with others, maybe. That's maybe his claim. That's not the claim of Davidson, actually. So, veridicalism, I think, is a fairly interesting answer to skepticism. But then the answer is extremely complicated. It depends upon interpretation of other people. It depends upon, it trades upon that fact. That's kind of complicated because somebody can come up with a different notion of interpretation as well, not necessarily a truth conditional notion or whatever. But veriticalism is a very new kind of thing, and there have been recent papers coming out on it as to defending this against skepticism. But though there are also other papers saying that no, this does not work. So there is a very recent paper in Philosophical Quarterly on veriticalism saying that this does not work. Indeed, it leaves us in the same state of ignorance as the other, as the skeptic is actually. That's the claim. So in any case, all these responses are there, and there are many others as well. So these are like the main responses to skepticism. Some of them are very, very recent. Some are fairly old, and there are other ones as well. Of course, there is the dismissal one. Why should we discuss skepticism? So that is also there. Somebody can just say, I don't care about skepticism. You can forget about it. I mean, why should I care about this? Of course, I know stuff. So end of story. So that's also one way of arguing. But if you are philosophers and you get into the subject and whatever, okay, then you get into the thing. So that's one way of looking at it. So let's now change the topic and look at the problem of definition. This, of course, has occupied philosophers since about 1963, since Gettier wrote his paper, but somebody else will speak about Gettier. So I'll just introduce the topic in a way which kind of gets into that issue. So one definition of knowledge is that it is true belief. So even in the Indian tradition, Gangesh appeared to believe this theory. The knowledge is just true belief. That's all. But it's very hard to believe that that's correct. How is that even possible? I may arrive at a true belief just by accident, just by luck. Let's say I believe that I'm going to win a lottery. So it turns out it's true. I actually win a lottery. I have the lottery ticket with me. Naturally, I bought the lottery ticket because I think I'm this very lucky person. I'm gonna win. And it turns out surprisingly I won. So I have a belief. It is true. So if that's the case, then that's wonderful. I get millions of dollars. Excellent. But do I really know that I'm going to win it? Of course not. It's just a true belief. So if true belief is knowledge, then if a person who wins the lottery and also believes that he's going to win the lottery, then he would be knowing that he's going to win the lottery. That's nonsense. Of course, that's not the case. So true belief cannot be knowledge because it can be just true by accident. Gettier, unfortunately, 1963, not just Gettier, actually, Russell also gave this kind of argument before, I think, in Problems of Philosophy. So he says that, look, another definition of knowledge, which is a very powerful definition, not easy to move. So it says that knowledge is justified truth. Obviously, I have no justification for believing that I'm going to win the lottery. So you add justification. What's your justification? Well, I can't simply say I'm a lucky person. That doesn't make any sense. That's not a good justification. So justified true belief seems to be the a solid definition of knowledge. Really good definition. Well, here's an example from Russell. It's the stopped clock example. Let's say you're rushing to the railway station. You see a clock. The clock is, it says it's 12 o'clock. Okay, excellent. So, and if that's the right time, it is indeed 12 o'clock. Okay, you go and catch the train. Do you know it is 12 o'clock? Well, unfortunately, actually, you have a belief it's 12 o'clock. It is true, it is 12 o'clock. Do you know it? Well, you are justified. You looked at the railway station clock. It's supposed to give the right time. So you are justified. Nothing, no problem with that. But unfortunately, there is a problem here, and that is that the clock had stopped at midnight. So exactly when it was midnight at 12 o'clock, it stopped. So it has not been working, like typical of railway stations. So it has stopped working. So you did see the clock, and what else are you supposed to see? So you look at the clock, you rush to the train. That's it. I mean, everything you did was right. Unfortunately, even though you had a justified true belief, the justification is there. You looked at the clock. What more justification is needed than looking at the clock for the time? So you have a true belief. Yes, it is indeed 12 o'clock. You also believe it. So, and you catch the train. It has excellent practical effects. So, but it's not knowledge. Justified true belief is not knowledge. No, that is shocking. Once we came to know this in 1963, and of course, post Russell as well, we are in big trouble. What are we supposed to do? We don't know what knowledge is. All we can do is have justified true belief. What more can I do than justification? But we know that justification doesn't get us to truth. This is a embarrassing thing, but it is correct. I mean, there was, for instance, massive justification for the existence of phlogiston long time back, but we know that that's not correct. So we know that that theory is just not right, even though the theory really worked. Actually, it actually did work if you look at the history of science. So there are various solutions to get here. I think other speakers will get into it. I just mentioned two things that happened. One idea was that, look, knowledge is just some kind of tracking. So I'll get to the tracking argument straight away. Wait. So Nozick suggested that, look, knowledge is, it's not a question of justification. Look, think about knowledge. What is this thing? When I know something about the world, what am I doing? I am essentially tracking the truth. Human beings are inquirers. We track the truth. We always want to know the truth. The truth is like a jewel, a wonderful thing. I want to know this. How can I know this? I track it. How does the satellite know your position and make that position flow into your GPS? Well, it tracks your position. That's what it is. So it is sensitive to your movements of the car that you're driving. So that's why Nozick's condition is called sensitivity. So Nozick says, yes, knowledge must be true belief, but we have to add something to it. Now, justification isn't working. So let's add sensitivity. What does sensitivity say? It says, if P were false, that what you believe is false, then you would not believe it. If it is false, then I am not sitting here. Why would I believe I'm sitting here? That makes no sense at all. So obviously, it's or if it is false that you are in a Bhaktivedanta Research Institute course, then why would you believe that you are in a Bhaktivedanta Research Institute course? It doesn't make any sense. So if something is false, you should not believe it. Why would you believe it? So if you were not born in India, why would you believe you were born in India? Unless, of course, somebody fed it into you since childhood. So that's it. But that's all right. So the idea is that we track the truth. There is another condition in this. One condition is if P were false, S would not believe it. And the other condition is P were true, S would believe it. That's like proper tracking the truth. Yeah, but so it solves what is called the fake barn case. I brought in the fake barn case because it's a bit of an interesting case and it has hung around in epistemology for a very long time. It was first introduced by, I think, Carl Ginet and then later on by Alvin Goldman. So, and this has been discussed and discussed and discussed threadbare, and we still don't know what is the solution to this problem. But it's a very interesting problem. So, the fake barn case is this: some guy named Henry in America, he's just driving on the road. He has no interest in villages or whatever. He's just rushing home, maybe. So, he just looks out. Now, the village that he looks at has many fake barns in it. Indeed, nearly every barn is fake except one, which is a real barn. Now, when he looks out, he actually sees the real barn. Does he know there is a real barn there? Remember, all the other barns are fake. Well, most people think no. He doesn't know there is a real barn there. When I first encountered this problem, I also thought, no, of course that's nonsense. He doesn't know there is a real barn there. Of course, I don't know what is the reason for it. And of course, that is the whole point of the subject of epistemology, to find out what's the reason why this case suggests to us that Henry doesn't know there is a real barn there. His perception is working. It is daylight. Everything is all right. What's the problem? He has a true belief there is a real barn there. He has perfect justification. He has excellent vision. Henry has wonderful vision. He's driving a car at speed. You better have good vision to drive a car. So, yeah, that's it. So, what more is necessary? Well, sensitivity is not there according to Nozick. So, he says that if instead of a real barn, there were a fake barn there, Henry would believe there was a real barn there, because he can't make a distinction between fake and real barns. So therefore, this fails the condition of sensitivity. Henry is not tracking the truth. Therefore, if Henry is not tracking the truth, therefore it follows that he doesn't know. So sensitivity succeeds. Unfortunately, there is a case which is brought by Kripke against this. So Kripke wrote a very long review of Nozick's book, Philosophical Explanations. This review wasn't published actually because it was too long, and it only concentrated on just one, maybe 5 pages of Nozick's book, and the rest of the book he left behind. So I'm not sure why Kripke did that, but anyway, this is published later in a book called Philosophical Troubles, the book that I don't have, by the way. So anyway, in that book, there's a 50-page article on this, and it's a fairly complex article to read, but some of the examples are very clear. So here's the clearest of them all. So we say that Kripke says if you change the soil condition such that you cannot build a fake barn where a real barn is built. So now let's say there is no real barn there. So obviously there is no barn there. Fake barn bhi to nahi hai na. There is no fake barn there. There is no real barn there. But you can't build a fake barn on that kind of soil condition. So when Henry looks out, he doesn't see anything. So he doesn't believe that. So if there is no barn there, Henry believes that there is no barn there. So, and when the real barn is there, Henry does believe there is a real barn there. So he is tracking the truth. So therefore, sensitivity as a condition fails to distinguish Henry from the non-knowers. Now, this is a slightly complex argument. I don't expect you to understand it like instantly, but that's okay. You said to sort of think about it for a while. It's really worth thinking about it. Kripke's article is a great article in epistemology as to how to demolish a particular set of conditions. All he's discussing is like something like 2 pages of Nozick in a 500-page book. He writes 50 pages on it, and he completely demolishes the entire sensitivity condition, saying that this is just complete nonsense. We cannot depend on this tracking condition. But tracking has survived this criticism, and it is still around, just like everything in philosophy. Nothing in philosophy ever dies. This is one of the odd aspects of our subject. But nothing ever dies in it. So maybe Bhaktivedanta was like, I don't know, maybe something around the 12th century it has come around, but it is still alive, very much running around in circles. You can't deny anything in the subject. So even with that kind of smashing criticism of sensitivity, then I believe no theory has suffered so badly as sensitivity has. But it is still around. People are still defending it. So, but all right, that's one area. The other condition, which is a much more popular condition, is safety. Sensitivity says, if P were false, you would not believe it. Well, safety says, if you believe something, then most likely it is true. Yeah, that's right. I believe my cell phone is to my right. Yeah, it is most likely that, I mean, it is no 99.99% I must be right. I mean, unless I am on drugs or something, how could I possibly make such a major mistake? It seems that our beliefs are largely safe. I believe that I'm in front of my laptop. Oh, yeah, it's largely safe belief. Yes, it's possible some prankster changed my laptop and put another laptop here, which is not my laptop. But yeah, all right, all this stuff can happen. but it seems extremely unlikely that this would have happened. Safety is a very good condition. Why? Somebody can say you are being fooled by an evil demon. There is no course like this going on. The evil demon makes you a fool and makes you think you are attending a Bhaktivedanta Research Institute course. But actually, nothing like this is happening. The evil demon is just fooling your brain. Well, safety says if you believe something, it is most likely true. How likely is it that there is an evil demon fooling you? Highly unlikely. Incredibly unlikely. How likely is it that you're a brain in a vat? Have we developed this technology? When are we going to develop this? I mean, nobody has any clue at all. Hardly, we don't know much about our brains in any case. So, it seems as if safety is a very good condition. Unfortunately, it has a failure, which is why I started with the dreaming argument. So even a person as intensely devoted to knowledge and the possibility of knowledge as, let's say, Ernest Sosa, he also thinks that when it comes to dreaming, safety fails. It's dreaming is too close. I told you just last night, just 5 hours back, maybe, or 6 hours back, I was dreaming that I was giving this lecture. It's true. It is true. I was actually dreaming this. So, Sosa says that how do you know you're not dreaming right now? Safety does not get us to the world. It does. It gets us to the world because evil demon is like, how likely is that? How likely is it that you're a brain in a vat? Well, it's not very likely. But it is very likely that you might be dreaming. 1/3 of our lives we spend sleeping. That's shocking, really. But what 1/3 of our lives we spend sleeping. Probably a good deal of the time is spent dreaming. That's really a big waste of time. But whatever. I mean, it's extremely likely that I'm dreaming. About, let's say, 30% likely. That's extraordinary. I mean, it's just incredible. So, I mean, if you think about it, 30% is pretty serious. I mean, 30% of the time, Virat Kohli scores centuries when he plays. And that makes him an incredibly good batsman. So if 30% chance is there that you could be dreaming, that's bad news for safety. So it seems that we had true belief as a definition of knowledge. That's not going to work. I did say, by the way, that Gangesh defended it, and look at his defense. It's an interesting defense of the notion of true belief, or maybe what is called true awareness. You can also, we then had justified true belief. That's not going to work. That is bad, but it's whatever it is. Then we have sensitivity, we have safety. None of it is working. So we have a real problem here as to what's the definition of knowledge. That's a nice, good, excellent research area. Good luck to those people who are getting into it. But it's something that one has to look at. Okay, let me move to the other problem. So we have looked at, I believe, the problem of skepticism. We looked at responses. We looked at the problem of definition of knowledge. We looked at various definitions people have given. It's not, nothing is really working. There are other definitions given by virtue epistemologists, but there will be a lecture coming up on it. So I don't want to get into that. But anyway, so how many types of knowledge are there? That's also an interesting issue. But this is, it's not such a depressing issue. If there are many different types of knowledge, that's very good. But many philosophers wish to reduce all types of knowledge to one type. And that's an interesting inter-philosophical argument that takes place. And sometimes it can be very, very interesting. So people have said, everybody agrees there is something called knowledge that. When I know that the moon is the satellite of the earth, I know that Saturn has rings. I know that the sun is it consists of 99% of the mass of the solar system. That's true, actually, it does. So I know all these things. So what kind of knowledge is this? It is I know that. I know a proposition. Everybody kind of agrees with it. I know the sun is rising, or I know right now there is no sun in Delhi. It's just gray and smoky and whatever. So I know all this. I just have to look out of the window. I figure out, yeah, that's right. So this kind of knowledge is what is called knowledge of propositions. But there are other kinds of knowledge. People have claimed these knowledge. So people say that there is something called knowing how. I mentioned it. I said, well, suppose you know how to swim. Doesn't sound like propositional knowledge. Suppose that you read a book of swimming. So obviously that doesn't teach you how to swim. It says, okay, you do your arm like this, do your arm like that. That's just propositional knowledge. It doesn't teach you anything about swimming at all. So I mean, it tells you some, it gives you some idea, but you have to do it to learn how to swim. How do you want to do that? Somebody can keep on telling me, read this book about how to ride a bicycle. That's not going to teach me anything about how to ride a bicycle. Ultimately, I have to ride it. So this kind of knowledge appears to be very different from knowing that the Earth is the satellite of the, oh sorry, the Moon is the satellite of the Earth. So knowing how appears to be very different from knowledge that. However, interestingly, in 2011, Jason Stanley wrote a book in which he defended the claim that knowing how is reducible to knowing that. It's an incredible thing to say, but I don't know. I mean, if you read his book, it sounds quite convincing. But there is a massive debate on this as to whether know how is reducible to know that. Nobody challenges know that, by the way. Some people challenge it, yes, based on some linguistic data. But otherwise, nobody really challenges know that. Know that structure is challenged. So I said in contrastivism, people think know that means I know that something rather than something else. So the structure of know that can be up for dispute, but the fact that it is know that, that's not up for dispute. But it is certainly up for dispute whether know how is somehow a different kind of knowledge. What about knowledge by acquaintance? Well, knowledge by acquaintance is something that is argued by Russell, for instance. So let's say you lose your keys, and the police tells you, "Wait, look, you made a complaint that you lost your keys, and can you please come to the station and find out?" So you go to the station, and there are many keys there. Obviously, many people have lost their keys, but you locate your keys instantly. How do you do that? Well, you are just acquainted with your keys. That's it. Russell didn't say this, of course. What Russell said that we are acquainted with colors, for instance. I know the color green. I'm just acquainted with it. I know the color magenta. I'm acquainted with. Some people are. So it's being acquainted with colors is it's not a knowledge that I don't I can always say I know that green looks like this or something. But that's just knowledge by acquaintance. I need to have some. I would not know how some pizza tastes unless I eat it. If you eat it, you know how it tastes. So that's knowledge by acquaintance. It's some kind of knowledge that somebody has by being acquainted with that object. This is a it has not suffered any great fame over the 20th century, but interestingly, in the last about 8 9 years, knowledge by acquaintance has suddenly made a reappearance in the literature. And people have said that we have spent a very long time on knowledge by knowledge of propositions and whatever. We better start looking at knowledge by acquaintance because this is more interesting than we thought it was. So knowledge by acquaintance is not necessarily reducible to knowledge how or knowledge that or something. It's a different kind of knowledge altogether. Whether it is a knowledge is, of course, something that is challenged. But people say that no, maybe it is some kind of knowledge. Okay, there is knowledge by description. There's a standard thing that Russell says. So he says that how do we know Napoleon, for example? I don't have access to Napoleon. I've never seen him. I have no knowledge by acquaintance of him. His friends and his family and his wife had acquaintance with Napoleon. But I don't have acquaintance with Napoleon. How do I know him? Well, I know him by description. So I just know that he was the emperor of France, that he was a dictator, that he did not. Well, I know this because I read a book. So he did not have anyone who tried to assassinate him jailed beyond 6 months. This is kind of interesting record about Napoleon. Actually, he never condemned anyone to death who wished to assassinate him. So I know this because I just read a book on vaguely related to Napoleon. So it's a very interesting fact about him. But I know this by description, right? Somebody just tells me. That's all there is to it. It's just kind of knowledge by testimony. But ultimately, I know this of Napoleon by description. I just know Akbar, Jahangir, Ashoka, what all these people. I just know them by description. All knowledge of history is just knowledge by description. I don't have access to that knowledge by acquaintance. So, of course, knowledge by description is very close to know that. That's fine, but it is still some kind of knowledge that is very specific about objects. And not all know that is about objects. For instance, if I know 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 may not necessarily be an object of any kind. So people differ about this, but one can maintain the position that 2 is not an object of any kind. So there are many kinds of knowledge. Are they all reducible to each other, or can I reduce everything to know that? It would be very pleasant if we could do that. Not really, actually, but still, philosophers dream that we can reduce all kinds of knowledge to know that. So, or you can dream that you can reduce everything to know how, maybe. Some people dream like that, but this is an interesting area of research, very, very interesting area, actually, as to what kinds of knowledge exist. And are there really different kinds of knowledge, or are we really speaking about the same knowledge which is manifesting itself in different ways? So this is a very interesting area indeed. Let's look at the next issue, which is what are the sources of knowledge? Yeah, here, of course, there is a fair amount of debate. You find this everywhere in Indian philosophy, by the way. So I think Indian philosophers have spilled huge amounts of ink on what are the sources of knowledge. Everybody has a different opinion. Nyaya has says one thing, Buddhists say another thing. So it's pretty much the same in Western philosophy with a little bit of difference. I mean, they kind of look more at it from the angle of skepticism. So the sources of knowledge are fairly straightforward. One is perception. So remember, I said knowledge by acquaintance is there. Perception gives me knowledge by acquaintance. So perception, I cannot perceive the past. So I can't perceive Jahangir, but how would I perceive? So I don't know whether this is possible to perceive. Maybe somebody can give an argument saying, yeah, no, we can perceive Jahangir, but I don't know. I've never heard of such a case. But so I can't perceive anything in the past. I can't perceive anything in the future. So all I can do is perceive the present, and not as the present, but I just perceive some objects around. I perceive that there is a white page in front of me with something typed on it and whatever. Some perception is going on here. So that's knowledge of the present, then memory, knowledge of the past. How would I know if everything is simply knowledge of by perception? Then I can know nothing about the past and nothing about the future. So, but of course, we know something about the past. I know that about an hour or hour and a half back, I had breakfast. I know that. How do I know that? It's not by perception. It's by memory, which is possibly dependent on perception, but it is certainly some kind of knowledge. I remember events from my childhood. How do I remember that? It's by knowledge by memory. I have some kind of memory image. All these arguments you will find in Russell's Problems of Philosophy. He kind of discusses all this. He is not very upfront on memory. Nobody ever is. But there is no doubt that some kind of animal like memory is something that we do possess. So our memories are very expanded in some sense. But people write long autobiographies, for instance. So, and they appear to remember all kinds of things. So, knowledge by memory is a very important thing, let's say, for a writer who is writing an autobiography. So, surely they believe that what they are writing is something they know. So, it is clearly something which is very, very important. So then there is introspection. Russell claimed that this gives knowledge to us. So by introspection, I mean that I can know that, let's say I desire to have coffee right now. I know this by introspection. How else would I know it? So I kind of think about what is it that I desire right now. I desire coffee, something like that. So, or I can ask myself, what am I thinking right now? Well, I'm thinking that my talk is going to get over very soon and I need to rush to the department. How do I know this? I know this by introspection. How else would I know it? So, introspection here doesn't mean I'm thinking very deeply about something. I think that's what it means in English, actually. It means that I'm thinking very deeply about something. That's what it means. So, it means something less grave than that. It just means that I can know my mental states. That's all. Another is reason. Obviously, I reason about things. And so I plan, I decide. That's what human beings do. They plan ahead, they decide. I do some reasoning, some math, and I come out say, okay, 1 billion years from now, the earth would be unlivable. I give all kinds of evidence for this. I give all kinds. Actually, that's true. It would be unlivable. So we know this from studying Venus actually. So you give all those reasons. Okay, look at Venus. Okay, it's a veritable hell. How did it become a hell? We know how it became a hell. The same hell is going to happen to the Earth in 1 billion years. Okay, we have excellent evidence for excellent evidence. So I give all kinds of reasons. So that's knowledge dependent on inferences that we make. There is no way I can know this, but just by looking at things around me, or by knowledge of the past, or by introspection. That knowledge is not going to tell me that in 1 billion years from now the Earth will be just like Venus. So I need reason for serious reasoning capacity is needed. We know by reason that the climate changes because of human beings. We know this by reason. It's not just by looking at things. So that's not going to help me. Memory is not going to help me. Introspection is not going to help me. I need reason for this. So, but all of it can be challenged. Perception is, as always, heavily challenged by skeptics. Memory, who can rely on memory? If I ask you, what did you eat for breakfast 8 days ago? Nobody remembers unless you eat the same breakfast every day. So that would just be a habit then. It's not a remembrance. But so memory is a highly questionable thing. Many people say that autobiographies are just, I mean, that nobody really remembers things that exactly. It's really more like people are just reconstructing their self as the way they wish to see it, something like that. So memory is a highly dubious source of knowledge, but of course, it's a very serious one. Introspection is, of course, can be easily challenged as to exactly what is it that we are aware of when we have mental states. Maybe we don't have mental states for all we know. The reason, of course, can be challenged. Hume challenge is that if you keep on reasoning and reasoning and reasoning, then practically nothing is ever known to you through reason, because all reasons can always be challenged by other reasons. So, which have equal weight. So, this is actually one of those problems. What do we do when we have reasons which have equal weight? So somebody can say, no, 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 Earth won't be like Venus. There are many other things that will intervene and more. That's true, actually. So in 1 billion years, any number of things can happen. So, which will prevent the Earth, hopefully, from becoming like Venus. So it's kind of hard to say which reason is going to win, which reason is not going to win. It's really hard to say that. So, but reasoning is something that has come into study of late in philosophy through epistemology. So people are looking at rationality and what role it plays in our knowledge. So, is it a direct role? Is it an indirect role? What kind of role is this? So, and what kind of knowledge does it give me? So that kind of thing is there. And so let's move on to the other area of knowledge, which is, let me see. Oh, I think the objects of knowledge I missed out. So here's the issue about objects of knowledge. So yeah, here is another issue which is very controversial. One is that what do we know when we know something? What do we know? Well, some people say we know facts. So I know that today is Monday, I think. So that's a fact, probably. I mean, that's a very complicated fact. But anyway, it is a fact. So at least in a very commonsensical way, it is. But are there really such facts out there to know that today is Monday? Is there really some fact walking around like this that I know? Or maybe I can say I know traffic is passing by on the road outside. Yeah, that's a fact. Is there really some fact like this? Some strange entity floating around in the world that we come to know? So that people have challenged this. There are no facts at all. So this fact ontology is a very seriously challenged ontology. Of course, many people believe it. So you might remember the opening of the Tractatus where Wittgenstein says that the world is all that is the case. So what he means to say is that the world consists of facts, not of things. That's another line from the Tractatus. So the fact ontology is introduced and it has caused serious problems in philosophy, but it appears that we tend to know facts. But what are facts? That's a very strange kind of entity. Frankly speaking, when I think of the entity itself, it doesn't make any sense to me that there are any facts in the world. But anyway, so then there is the hugely controversial question of whether we know universals or not. So Russell makes this claim. He says that we know the universals of brotherhood and diversity. These are the examples he gives. So, or the universal of whiteness, of redness. But I should say that the universal of whiteness is not white. It's just the universal of whiteness. So, and Plato believed that you can only know universal. You can't know facts or mental states or something. No, you can't know all these things. What you can know is universal. That's all. You can't know anything else. Indeed, that is the whole point of knowledge, to get to the knowledge of universals. Plato has a kind of interesting notion of what we can know, and it's not an easy notion to challenge. So many people think universals don't even exist, just like many people think facts don't exist. Many philosophers think universals don't exist. I mean, whoever thinks that abstract objects like universals exist? Some philosophers think only abstract objects exist. The rest of the existence is not really existence of any kind. I mean, you can't seriously say the objects in the world exist or something. So it's a battle about the word existence, what it applies to, whether it's a predicate at all is another issue. But it is not incontestable that facts and universals exist. Nothing like this is there. So what we come to know when we know something is a highly controversial issue. Take sense data. Everybody thinks in the beginning of the 20th century, everybody said, yeah, we know sense data. We know green color. We know the red color. We know what ice cream tastes like. Sense data. But post 1960s, I don't think anybody ever believed that there was any knowledge of sense data. Everybody said this is just some rubbish for all kinds of reasons. So that is highly questionable whether we know sense data. What about mental states? Yeah, it seems that we know mental states. I know that I have a belief that 2 days from now there will be an exam in which I have to make a question paper. Yeah, that's very right. I have a belief like that, and I have a desire to see the question paper before the exam because I'm supposed to be setting it. So I have all these beliefs and desires. So it seems that yes, I mean, this seems more certain. It seems hard to believe that how could I possibly be wrong about this? But yeah, I mean, some people argue what is a mental state? What's a belief or a desire? These are like very mostly strange entities. We need to change our language here. Well, I'm not very sure what to say about this. One can stick to the language, I guess, without being committed to an ontology of beliefs and desires. That's possible, but not very pleasant. So there's a kind of unpleasantness about all mental states if you start thinking about them more seriously as to what these things are. So whether we actually know our beliefs and desires, how we come to know them, are there really any beliefs or desires, or is there some chemical stuff going on in my brain? So these are issues that are often discussed. Then let's look at states of knowledge. Yeah, I mean, some people argue that I know that I know. So if I know that I like ice cream, I also know that I know that I like ice cream. Or I know that I know that I like. So I can have knowledge of states of knowledge. Some people deny this. They say that no, no, no. I mean, look, this leads to an infinity, so it doesn't make any sense. So one response can be, it's fine if it leads to infinity. How does that matter? It's all right with me. So, but some people just say, no, we know things, but we don't know that we know things. That seems kind of hard to believe. We sometimes do know that we know certain things. And sometimes we defend ourselves. We say that, no, I know that there's climate change is caused by human beings. So, but the word "know" may be shifting in meaning or sense from being a word which is displaying knowledge, and sometimes it displays performance or confidence. So these things are there about the uses of the word "know." Sometimes I say I know this just to suggest confidence in the matter. Sometimes I say it to suggest that I have a worked out theory. Sometimes I say it just to impress upon somebody else. So there are all these speech acts involved, and it's kind of hard to say what speech act is going on when I say I know that I know. So whether this kind of knowledge exists or not is very doubtful. But commonsensically, it certainly seems that it is right. In philosophy, of course, much of philosophy is a battle against common sense, and a lot of philosophy is also a protection of common sense. So there's a kind of philosophy vacillates between periods when common sense is heavily attacked, and then there are periods when common sense is heavily defended. So there's a kind of vacillation that kind of goes on. It oscillates between these two, not vacillates, but oscillates between these two positions. So where states of knowledge fall, I'm not very sure whether it's a very commonsensical or should it be described as a non-commonsensical position. But all of these are highly controversial. Do we know facts? No, not really. What is a fact? Do we know universals? Do they even exist? How can I know something which doesn't even exist? So the very existence of universals is up for grabs. Do we know sense data? Well, nobody thinks we know sense data since about 1960s or so. So I'm not very sure. It does seem to me that Russell is right in thinking that yes, we have some acquaintance with sense data. It's just like in a commonsensical way. Russell wasn't speaking technically when he said that. But anyway, we certainly seem to have some idea of our beliefs and desires. It makes no sense to say that I have no idea about my beliefs and desires. That seems quite ridiculous. So certainly, if all these, I would say, if anything we know, we certainly know our mental states. I mean, that seems certainly. This is what Descartes also said. I'm pretty sure I have this desire. I'm pretty sure I believe this. He says, I think, therefore I have. I mean, like, just I know and I'm thinking. If I may not know anything else, but I know I'm thinking. At least this much is there. So we are pretty sure about the mental states that we have. One can argue about their metaphysics, but that's a different issue. So we have seen that there is a problem of skepticism for knowledge. There is a problem of definition for knowledge. We have problems regarding what the objects of knowledge are. We have also problems regarding the sources of knowledge. So I think the next problem is the value of knowledge. Yeah, this is a majorly discussed issue in contemporary philosophy. Many of the issues I raised have been discussed in contemporary philosophy, like contrastivism, contextualism. The value of knowledge is a very heavily discussed field, apart from the fact as to what value means. That's another issue. And so, if you look at very contemporary articles in, say, Journal of Philosophy or whatever, some very good journal, you will see that this value issue is heavily discussed. So, well, if you think about it for 2 seconds, it seems as if true belief is obviously more valuable than false belief. If I falsely believe that I am in Delhi, that's a very silly kind of false belief. But whatever, if I do believe it, that I'm not in Delhi and I'm actually Jaipur, that's not a valuable belief at all. That doesn't make any sense at all. I better have true beliefs. Nobody will say that it is good for you to have false beliefs. Sometimes it is good, maybe, in certain instances of life. So maybe you believe God exists and is taking care of you. That's a false belief, possibly, highly likely it is false. But sometimes it's very helpful in life to believe and to have false beliefs. So it's a comforting belief to have that God is taking care of me, something like that. So sometimes false beliefs are very helpful, but still people think, no, you better have true beliefs. So justified true belief, however, is even more valuable than true belief because you have justification. Now, Socrates in the Meno, who is the progenitor of all these problems that I'm discussing here, he says that, look, what's the point of having knowledge? What is the point? Why do we value knowledge? Everything I can do in life, I can do by true belief. So the road to Larissa problem is somebody wants to go to Larissa, some town in Greece or what. So Athens maybe. So now there are two roads to Larissa. So some guy says, okay, take that road. He has a true belief. He has a true belief that that road will go to Larissa. The right road will go, not the left one. He's right. He's just right by accident, whatever. Yeah, but that's all right. I take his advice and go and take the right turn. That's it. I end up in Larissa. So Socrates says that for all purposes of practical action, all that I need is true belief. I don't need any knowledge. What will I do with justification? Who's going to justify to me how to get to Larissa? Nobody. Everybody has some kind of true belief, and that's the end of the matter. If somebody has justification, that's not going to make any difference to practical action. I will still get to Larissa by taking the right turn. Nothing is going to change by the difference between true belief and justified true belief. Nothing is going to happen to my practical action. It's just the same. Action is the same. So Socrates says, why do we have value knowledge so much? He doesn't answer the question typical of Socrates, but it is a disturbing thing. Why do we pursue knowledge if it has no practical value? What Socrates really wants to say is that knowledge has no practical value. It has some other value because all practical needs are met by true belief. He's, of course, discussing virtue. And so he says that many people have true beliefs about virtue, but they don't have any knowledge. So this creates some significant problem regarding how do we understand virtues at all. That's a different issue. But the point is it's a deep point. Why are you in college? Why are you going through this course? For what? Knowledge is, for all practical purposes, all you need is to tick mark the answers. You have some true beliefs. So in an exam, you don't have to have any justified true belief. All you need is true belief. You simply tick mark the answers. And that's it. Finished. Course is over. You may have no knowledge at all, but the result is right. I may have no knowledge of medicine. I just mug up some garbage. I go and tick all the marks in the NEET exam or whatever exam. That's it. I tick mark on the right answers and I just learn the garbage and that's it. Finished. So I don't need any deep theoretical knowledge of medicine to do all this. So why value knowledge? Another problem that has been raised is that what can human beings do more than have justified true belief? What can I do more than this? I have true belief. Okay, you say that's not knowledge. All right, fine. I go for justified true belief. So I do all kinds of work, science and philosophy and this and that, and I come up with a justification. Okay, but you say that no, justified true belief is not knowledge. Russell has shown this, Gettier has shown this, there is a huge literature on this, it's not knowledge. Well, what more can I do? I am a human being. More than this is not possible. Some philosophers have argued more than justified true belief is just not possible. I can't do anything about this anymore. So this raises the issue, what's the value of knowledge? It's nice to say that it is intrinsic value. So people say it is intrinsic value, or it has some kind of intermediate value or something, or final value or something like, yeah, but those are distinctions we need to draw in the structure of value, which is an interesting issue actually. What's the structure of value? What things have greater value and lesser value? So it appears that knowledge has this remarkable, incredible value to it, but it does not have any practical value. So you will remember sometimes your parents tell you, oh, so you tell your parents, okay, I'm doing philosophy. They say, oh, this has no practical value. So why are you doing it? It doesn't make any sense at all. Actually, this is true for every piece of knowledge. That's what Socrates is saying. He's not talking about philosophical knowledge. Maybe he is, but it appears that from his example of the road to Larissa, he's actually talking about any kind of knowledge. It doesn't matter what knowledge it is. It could be engineering, it could be medicine, it could be management, doesn't matter what it is. Everywhere, true belief will invariably trump knowledge in practical affairs. As long as I have true beliefs, enough. It doesn't matter whether I have knowledge or not. So far as practicality is concerned, I don't need knowledge. So your parents' argument, if it works against philosophy, it works against every subject actually. So this is Socrates' idea essentially. He's saying that somebody can be skeptical about philosophy, but it's the same thing for every subject. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. The whole issue is knowledge is irrelevant for practical purposes. What is relevant is true belief. In the 20th century, we know that even if I have the justified true belief, I don't have knowledge. So this seems to suggest that either knowledge is unattainable or it has some incredible strange value to it, which is not really practical by nature. So I just have knowledge, yes, but it has no practical value. I know, for instance, that the moon is a satellite of the Earth. Yeah, so what? It has no practical value for me unless I have some astrologer or something. But I'm not. So and of course, even in astrology, that's not going to matter so much. So that appears to be a problem regarding what's the value of knowledge. What value does it have if it is not practical value? Are all values practical? And this is across the board. It's not. It doesn't apply to philosophy. Why should I do philosophy? Well, what? Why should I do management? It's the same thing. I don't get any knowledge there. All I get is maximum justified true belief. That's still not knowledge. So knowledge is some incredible thing that people pursue with, but we appear to know that it is very, very difficult to get. Incredibly difficult. We don't know the definition of knowledge. We don't know the objects of knowledge. We are unsure about the sources of knowledge. Skepticism is there. So if that's the case, then I mean, it's very hard to say what value does this thing have. But it certainly has serious value for human being. The word knowledge has a kind of intensity to it, which other words simply don't possess. Well, to some extent, other words do possess it. So it has recently, over the last 20 years, it has been suggested that knowledge is not really the aim of well, inquiry. What we actually aim at is, yes, of course, we aim at knowledge, that's fine. But we also aim at a higher value thing, which is understanding. So, understanding, of course, must have knowledge under it somewhere. So, our idea is that we have understanding. Through that understanding, we can bleed out knowledge, maybe something like that. So, epistemologists have started changing the goals of the subject. They are saying that we have been pursuing knowledge and what it is for a very, very long time. But now it seems to us that we need to be a bit more careful about our goals, and we have to say that, look, let's pursue what understanding is. So there's been a huge explosion of literature on understanding, and what this thing is, what kind of cognitive state it is. Why do we really pursue understanding, or we don't pursue understanding? So what are we really doing when we are pursuing understanding? What is understanding? What kind of thing is this? And is this the real goal? Some people say that epistemology, the word comes from episteme. So it appears that Plato did not mean knowledge by episteme, he meant understanding. So there's an issue regarding the etymology of the word epistemology, which is the study of knowledge. So people actually episteme can be taken as belief as well. So episteme can mean belief, it can mean knowledge, it can mean understanding. So it seems like an ambiguous sort of word or a polysemous word. It has many meanings. So Plato may have used this with the word, with the meaning of understanding in mind. If he has that meaning in mind, then we have been a bit wrong in thinking about epistemology. So, not a bit wrong, but very seriously wrong. So, what we really should be doing is pursuing understanding of the world, not knowledge. It seems that knowledge is almost unattainable, whatever that thing is. But understanding is attainable. We have done it in some areas of science. We have done it in literature, in every area. As a matter of fact, we have some understanding. People have understanding of Shakespeare. People have understanding of how planets work. So we look at understanding interrelations of objects with each other. We kind of study that, and that gives us understanding. And so, understanding is a much more approachable kind of subject where I don't have to worry about true belief and justify true belief and counter examples and this and that and whatever. But I pursue the notion of understanding in a way which is significantly analytic, and it gives me some knowledge of what that thing is, or maybe some understanding of what that thing is. So, I started with the idea as to the fact that we have knowledge, but there are various problems with it. So there's a problem regarding whether we can have knowledge. Skeptics attack it. We have a problem of definition of knowledge. We have a problem regarding the sources of knowledge. We have a problem regarding the types of knowledge. We have a problem regarding the objects of knowledge. And so, and of course, we have a problem regarding the value of knowledge. So all these problems will hopefully be covered by others. Certainly the definition part and many areas of virtue epistemology are all going to be covered, I think, today or tomorrow. So you will have a much better idea of what I have been speaking as the other speakers come in. But as you go ahead in the course, you should have all these problems in your mind. Many of these are being discussed right now in across various journals in philosophy or in India or wherever. It doesn't matter where it is. It's just a question of philosophers taking interest in discussing the matter. So with this, I end my talk. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is indeed a very, very nice, overview of some of the central issues in epistemology, which I'm sure, as students of philosophy, we are really, at least I have really enjoyed it, the talk. So now we have almost 15 minutes in hand. So I would like to request the participants, if they have any questions, comments, or clarifications to ask, please mention your name and come forward with your questions or comments.
Hello, sir. Am I
Yes,
audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. My name is Satyabrat Biswas, and my first question is, sir, can we consider consistency as a shield against the dream argument? I mean, when we are arguably in awake situation, not in dreams, when we observe the patterns of natural phenomena. So there is a consistent pattern in there. I mean, water always flows downwards. But when we are dreaming, we can watch inconsistent pattern in empirical phenomena. Like sometimes we can watch that the water is flowing downwards, and sometimes it is flowing upwards. So consistency can it be taken as a shield against the dream argument?
yeah, that's an interesting question. People give all these arguments saying that, look, life is very consistent. I mean, I eating lunch, dinner, all kinds of things, and so the time flows in a particular way and whatever. But in a dream, there is no consistency. Actually, this argument was given. There's some answer given by Condorcet, I think. If that's not, I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's a French name. So he says that you can have a perfectly consistent dream life. Nothing is illogical about thinking that a person has a consistent non-dream life and an inconsistent dream life. No, it is quite possible that in your dream life, every day you begin with the last moment of the dream that had ended. So you continue with that thing. So he says that there is nothing illogical about this. So consistency is not it is not a logical argument I can give against dreaming. Of course, I can dream consistently too. Nothing odd is there about this. Also, if the world is not necessarily a consistent place. So often there are cases where things behave not as per our expectations. So I think there's a very famous case of I don't know why Galileo said this, but anyway, so somebody told Galileo that look, you do all these experiments, ball is coming down, this, that, and balls always come down, they don't go up. But he told him that there's a saint in Italy, some guy, he always flies out of his window and he flies back. So Galileo had a very good answer to this. He said, yes, I agree that the saint flies out and he flies back. But I'm not trying to explain the saint's movements. All I'm trying to explain is the ball's movement. If I can explain this, that is enough. So it is not like the world is a consistent place. I mean, the world it certainly behaves consistently, but that's like a scientific idea that we have. Uh, Dreams can also behave perfectly consistently. At least it is logically possible. So it is true that water could be flowing upwards in a dream, but it is logically possible that we have dreams which are perfectly consistent. There is nothing impossible about this. If that's possible, then the dreaming argument cannot be answered by consistency. However, your consistency answer has something to do with veridicalism. So the veridicalist argues that since my interpretation of other people clearly depends upon the fact that their beliefs are consistent with each other, so and that this shows that their beliefs are true, therefore skepticism falls apart. So one has to see that the consistency argument is somewhere there. I did say that veridicalism is a fairly complex kind of argument against skepticism. It has too many premises to it and too many assumptions are going on, but it is not entirely it can give you a very uncomfortable feeling about skepticism after a while if you kind of get into the veridicalism literature. So yes, there is something about your intuition that consistency is indeed an answer to skepticism, but you will have to go through that whole circus of philosophy of language and interpretation and this and that and whatever, and finally get to the answer that yeah, okay, consistency of everybody's beliefs with each other, not just my belief and and my interaction with the world, but my belief and Professor Chakrabarty's belief and your belief and everybody's beliefs, they are all consistent with each other. Therefore, it seems to suggest that our beliefs must be true, largely speaking. So yes, that kind of reasoning can be given. So your answer is close to veridicalism, though you may not have thought so, but it is quite close to veridicalism. If that's the case, then we have to just discuss veridicalism and see whether that is a consistent, that is a good case against skepticism.
Thank you very much.
We have a query from one of our participants. He's asking, could you please share a short bibliography of simple works which you have used for this presentation?
Yeah, I can send it to Professor Chakravarti, and I think he can just distribute it amongst the participants, because I don't have a list of participants. So
Okay,
one
sure.
can read any kind of anthology. I think Greco and Souza have an anthology on epistemology. Noah Lemos has a book called, not that I have read it, but he has a rather decent book on it's the Cambridge Introduction to Epistemology. That's a fairly decent introduction to epistemology. Souza has a book on just called epistemology, but I don't think that's a good book actually. Somewhat maybe controversially, but I think that it's a he just wants to argue for his own position, which is not a good thing to do in an introductory book. So, but otherwise, you can read Noah Limos's book. It's a Cambridge Introduction to Epistemology. That's a good book to read. Very nice book to read, actually.
Okay. Any other question or comment, please?
Sir, I have another question. May I ask, sir?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sir, is it possible to deduce knowing by acquaintance to knowledge of that? Is it possible? Because when in the example you given that the sun, I know that the sun is shining. At least I have to look at the sun to know that the sun is shining. So there is a question of acquaintance there, I think.
Russell does discuss this matter. So he says that knowledge by acquaintance is a case of direct awareness. Propositional structuring of that awareness does not occur in the direct awareness. So his idea is that knowledge by acquaintance is not reducible to knowledge of a proposition or knowing that. So knowledge by acquaintance is not knowing. I don't know that the sun is rising. I just see the sun rising. That's all it is. I just see the sun rising. So it is just direct awareness. He uses another phrase, immediate consciousness. If you want to read about acquaintance, the new incarnation of it, read Matt Duncan. I'll repeat the name, Matt Duncan. He works in Rhode Island University somewhere in the philosophy department. And he's written a lot on acquaintance of late, very recent work actually. I have been looking at his work for some time because I got interested in, I had to teach Russell actually. So naturally, if you're teaching, you kind of look what's going on. So people have been discussing this acquaintance thing for the last 5 years, I think. It's the idea is to actually separate acquaintance from knowledge by knowledge that, not the idea to reduce knowledge by acquaintance to knowledge that. It's actually separated from it. Most people thought that there is no such thing as acquaintance, everything is knowledge that. But now it is actually beginning to seem as if knowledge by acquaintance is really a separate kind of knowledge. It is not the same as knowledge that. I don't think the case has been made successfully, but Russell probably made the best case because he just discussed it very common sensically, saying that look, you have to have some knowledge by acquaintance. It's just present knowledge, right? I just have direct awareness that I'm speaking on the laptop. I don't have direct awareness that this is a Bhaktivedanta Research Institute course. I'm not directly aware of it. That's a knowledge of a proposition. It's like I know the sun is rising. That's very, very different. It's actually a very complex thing, this whole knowledge of propositions thing. The more I think about it, the more I don't know. One just feels hopeless about how we can even understand this thing. It's just somehow surprising that a human being is capable of this. But an animal can also have acquaintance. I don't know whether I can have acquaintance with the sun is rising, but I definitely can have acquaintance with a risen sun, something like that. I don't think I can have acquaintance with the sun is rising. I just have a direct awareness which is fairly limited.
Yes, yes, yes. I was thinking about that. Just I can see that the sun is shining, not direct acquaintance. Just I can see that the sun
Yeah,
is shining.
that what you see is the sun is, yeah, it's not propositional knowledge of any kind. That's what Russell is saying. It's very
Okay,
controversial, of course.
okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank
Any other question or clarification?
Sir, I have one.
Yes, please go ahead.
So my name is Anvita. I was just wondering where Hilary Putnam's semantic externalism stands as a response to the problem of skepticism in this context.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's been one of the major responses in the, I think, post-60s to skepticism. That look, the meaning of words is all determined externally. So therefore, when I say that I am a brain in a vat and therefore I don't know I have two hands, well, the very fact that I can say I have a brain in a vat suggests that there is an external world because meanings of words are just determined externally. So, but of course, this depends upon whether semantic externalism is right. So, some people may argue that semantic externalism is not right. So, Davidson doesn't give this argument against skepticism interestingly, because he also is some kind of vague causal theorist regarding meanings. But his argument against skepticism is very indirect and unusual. So, I have never been able to figure out what that argument is, but it is something like Veritism only. But they don't take the externalist line because they don't want to commit themselves to the idea that meaning is just externally determined. It is determined, yes, externally, but it is not determined so heavily that skepticism is instantly ruled out. So there are critics of externalism. Yes, I think you should read Anthony Breutner. He has, not that I have read him, but I know that he has various arguments against the position that Putnam maintains, saying that no, this is not really right. That just because all meaning is determined externally, even if that were the case, that would suggest to us that skepticism is instantly false. Though it certainly suggests that to me, that yes, if all meanings were determined externally, that just immediately suggests that the external world is there. So otherwise, how can any of my words mean anything at all? So if the skeptic has to answer that, they have to work very hard indeed. So yes, that argument is there. I kind of missed that out. So it's nice that you brought it in. That argument is definitely there, and it is indeed a very powerful argument against skepticism, as long as externalism can be had.
Okay, thank you, sir. It's helpful. I'll check out the resources.
So since we have 2-3 minutes more, any one or two questions or comments from the participants?
Can I have a clarificatory remark, please?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. Since in the very beginning, you were talking about the JTP problem, and it seems to me that you holds that even before Gettier, Russell seems to have the same kind of argument that JTP is not the correct definition of knowledge. So can you please mention the reference where I can get this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I just remembered it off my head. So I think the clock example is in Problems of Philosophy, 2012. I think this example is there. But my memory is obviously should not be trusted. But I think this argument is there.
Okay.
It's a very quick argument he gives, but I think it is there in Problems of Philosophy.
Sir, may I say something?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I think the clock example is given in Chisholm's books also, so you can find there.
Oh, Chisholm's book. Yeah, sure. Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, thank you.
Just one more question or comment. Okay, since we don't have any other questions or comments from the participants, let me again convey my sincere thanks to Dr. Bhowmick for a really, really nice overview of skepticism and the possible responses to it. I'm sure since most of our participants are prospective PhD students, or some of them are already doing PhD in philosophy, I'm sure that they have been greatly benefited by you. Thank you again, Dr. Bhowmick.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It was very nice to see you and all the participants as well. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.